When my phone rang at 4:10 on Thursday afternoon, I already had a feeling about the text that was coming. But I still checked it, and yep, it was from Emerson Burke, my PI. She confirmed that Martha Harrington, my wife, had been served. I wear many hats: wife, mother, sister, daughter, and friend. Martha, on the other hand, was a big shot at Willington in Taunton, a well-known legal firm in Hartford. As the senior partner, one of my main duties was to oversee the cases of 7 junior partners. Martha had 2 mandatory meetings with the junior partners every Monday morning. Meetings started at 10 o'clock on Thursdays at 4 o'clock sharp. If you were late, Martha would give you hell the whole time. The sheriff ended the Thursday meeting at 4:02 by serving Martha divorce papers. "Mrs. Harrington, your husband wants a divorce after 23 years. I had a good relationship with my wife and she would be embarrassed to be served in front of her colleagues." Despite the tension in her court, she refused to give in. Instead of rushing home, she locked herself in her office to go over the divorce papers like only a seasoned lawyer can. Every word in that petition made me think the initial reading of the legal documents was a bit confusing. I blamed irreconcilable differences as the reason for the divorce, so Martha wouldn't think I knew about her cheating with Michael Kinsley, a 29-year-old guy she's been seeing on the down low. She's probably gonna be shocked when she sees his name pop up on her phone too. So basically, when we sold our huge beach house in Connecticut, Martha and I split the money. She gets her retirement, I get mine, and once all the bills are paid, we split our checking accounts. Luckily, we both made bank, so no need for alimony. Martha was probably shocked when she saw that my engineering firm wasn't part of the deal. She knew my divorce lawyer is top-notch. I recommended her to some people I know who needed the same services. She always used to say that my lawyer was really aggressive. She would be shocked that someone so respected in the legal world would forget to mention the company. I knew she would smell something fishy, but she wouldn't know what exactly. After reading the document again to make sure a friend's death wasn't mentioned, Martha would gather her closest colleagues for an emergency meeting. "Let's go through the paperwork and come up with a plan for how to handle me. Hi, I'm Chris Harrington." Martha and I met at the University of Connecticut. She was a second-year law student and I was working on my PhD in mechanical engineering. We started dating a week after meeting and quickly became exclusive. On our 3rd date, as we were walking to the car after a great dinner, Chris suggested we go to her apartment. Martha said we ended up making love for the rest of the weekend. Our sex life was incredible. We both agreed that we would. We never involve anyone else in our sex life and we always stay faithful to each other. We made it official by exchanging vows at our wedding, which happened 2 weeks after we both got our advanced degrees. The wedding was a big affair, held in Martha's hometown of Portland, Maine. The party took place under tents on a warm summer night by the rocky Maine coast. Our honeymoon was in Aruba and we came back with great memories. No 10 lines before graduation, Nether had started interviewing with a bunch of legal firms in Hartford. 2 weeks after I got back, she got a job in Willington in Taunton. We spent the next 20 years growing our love, raising 2 awesome kids, and juggling work and family responsibilities. When my dad retired 12 years ago, I took over the family business and bought his shares. Arthur became a junior partner at her law firm. 7 years into her job, she's now a senior partner in year 16. Life was great until. 3 years ago I found this letter at work. It was anonymous and had, personal and confidential, written on it. Inside was a folded notebook paper with a message saying my wife was cheating with some dude named Michael Kinsley. There was even a photo of Martha and this Michael guy at a motel. I hired a private investigator and in just 2 months, I had tons of proof of Martha's affair. Another month went by and so, I was trying to act all buddy-buddy with my dad and be a good husband, you know. I put together my crew, my divorce lawyer, business lawyer, and accountant were all on board. I laid out my plan and told them it might take a while to get everything sorted. Their job was to make sure everything I did was legit and couldn't be used against me in the divorce. Then, just before 6, I got a text from my PI. Michael Kinsley got served. I had met Rachel Kinsley twice. A few weeks ago, he finally spilled the beans about the 3-year investigation he did, which turned up a ton of evidence showing that my wife was cheating on me with her husband. They suggested a divorce lawyer for me, who was more than happy to take on her case. I thought any plans Willington and Compton had to fight my divorce petition were out the window, since Michael's wife had already claimed adultery as the reason for her divorce. Her petition had all sorts of PR stuff, like stories, pictures, and videos. It was a whole package deal. That night, around 8 p.m. Man, that garage door was making a racket. It had been 4 hours since Martha was served, and I was silently questioning if all my planning for the past 3 years would beat out her advice on the war. I was chilling at the head of our 10-seater dining table, pouring Martha a glass of her fave red wine and placing it in front of her. I heard Martha shout when the garage door to the kitchen opened. I took a sip of the bourbon that had cooled a bit. She started by checking out the family room, then headed to my office, and finally the living room before I caught her in the act. Colloquial translation: in the dining room, Martha gave me a look, checked out the room, then sat at the end of the table. She grabbed her glass, raised it to me, thanked me for the wine, and took a long sip. After a moment, she spoke up. "I don't want a divorce. I know I messed up, but let's talk about this like adults. Yeah, I had an affair, but I'm not a jerk. You've reminded me of that plenty of times. Hey man, Martha's been getting down and dirty behind your back. I didn't even have to tell you. I had enough proof that Martha's been getting some action on the side at least once a month for the past few years, never letting me have a turn." Martha was clearly pissed, her face was red and she was breathing heavily through her mouth. I watched as she tried to deny it. "Why did you have to mess up Michael's family? He's got 2 beautiful kids who are now gonna grow up without a dad." Man, I had to hold back a laugh when I saw Rachel Kinsley. She's a real looker and her kids are gonna have a new stepdad soon. I bet he won't be as much of a cheater as you. I like the duck toy though. So, why should I care about their family? He never cared about mine. I asked him nicely to talk to me like a grown-up because his language was not helping. I could see my words wipe the smile off his face, which I knew got under Martha's skin. "Come on, Martha, I'm just trying to help. If you don't like the way I talk, you can leave. I won't try to stop you." Just as I thought, Martha didn't budge. "How long have you known about this?" Instead of answering her question, I looked over the instructions I had in front of me before Martha showed up. I picked up a copy of the mysterious document that was sent to my office and slid it across the table. Martha took out the short letter and photo, inspected them, and then looked at the postmark on the envelope. "You've known for 3 years but haven't done anything." "Nothing," I couldn't help but giggle. "Trust me, I've been through a lot. Martha and I met at work today for 4 hours to prep for this discussion. I had 3 years to get ready." Martha's face darkened with worry when I said that. "I didn't want to go there yet, you know. Like, for example, ever since I found out, we haven't had sex. We hardly even touch intimately, except for a peck on the cheek. It's been 3 years since we had a proper hug, you haven't even noticed." "I was thinking maybe you lost interest in sex," Martha commented, which just made me laugh. "Damn, Martha, I'm just not feeling it anymore when it comes to getting it on with you," I said. Martha paused for a moment, then asked, "Have you really gone 3 years without getting any action?" I couldn't help but grin from ear to ear. "Yep, 3 years without doing the deed with you. But don't get it twisted, I've had plenty of action elsewhere," I added. Martha slumped back in her chair, looking shocked. I continued, "The difference is, I've got video proof of a lot of your exes still hanging around, while you don't have any evidence against me." "I love you, Chris, I always have," Martha pleaded. "It was just a way to blow off steam, especially since you've been sleeping with me now." "Don't even start with that, Martha. It's your fault for carrying on this affair every week for the past 3 years. Don't even try to put the blame on me," I fired back. Martha stopped for a moment before speaking again. "I love you, and I know you love me too. But you're wrong, Martha. For 3 years, you've been lying to me, breaking our vows, and cheating on me. You've embarrassed and disrespected me in the worst way possible. It took a while for the love to fade. She disappeared, but I don't love you, I don't even like you anymore." Martha's emotions that she had been holding back suddenly exploded as she jumped up and ran out of the room. I didn't bother following her because I knew she would come back. I figured she'd come back ready to fight, and I was right. Martha changed into pants and a black top before coming back. She sat down and refilled her glass with the wine I had left at her end of the table. Chris, I think you should think it over. I have a great team at the... I'm at the office dealing with some divorce lawyer outside of our regular team. You're losing a lot of money because of this. I know Sharon Brown is good at what she does, but I've already spotted some mistakes in the paperwork she's been working on. If we can't figure out a way to work together, I'll have to bring in my own people to handle this mess. My faith has been suffering because I haven't been smiling or laughing much, but now I'm back to my old self. That's the difference between your team and mine. The updated schedule will be out tomorrow. For the past 3 years, my team has been on top of things. Hey, my team is taking things slow and steady, while your team is starting the war tomorrow. But my team's job is done. I needed a minute to let that sink in before I can move on. I'll believe you when you say you love me, even though I find it hard to believe after 3 years of lies. But hey, I'll take your love. I bet by the time our divorce is official, you'll hate me. Funny thing is, everything you'll hate me for has already gone down, you just don't know it yet. Martha. You think you can't turn our kids against me? I never even tried to turn them against you. In fact, I haven't even talked to them. I'm planning to reach out to them this weekend, along with our parents and siblings. I'm going to let them know that I filed for divorce because of your affair. I'll tell our kids that they should still respect you and I hope they can still have a relationship with you, but ultimately it's up to them. If anyone has doubts, they can ask me. Man, you really stabbed me in the back. I could totally spill the beans and send them the whole report on you. I know you don't want them to find out, so just admit you've been messing around behind their back. Martha couldn't stand losing and she was starting to realize she was falling way behind, losing ground with every argument. Instead of backing off, she exploded at Bill, saying she's gonna strip him of his power in the company. This was just the beginning of my plan to take down Martha. She thought threatening my business would be her winning move, but I hit back hard. It's my company, after all. What was that about? She totally dissed me, acting like I'm some kind of weirdo. Engineering needs to be precise. I'm gonna take control of my share in the company, which has been going on for way too long. Before I could even say anything, she yelled at me in this super condescending way. Don't you remember, honey? We sold Piggy to the Swedes 2 years ago. That's not even legal. The company is a family business and I never agreed to the sale. I never said you agreed to the sale, but you did give me full power of attorney over everything in the company. Your company, actually. Hey, I used this document to wrap up the deal and stash the cash in offshore accounts just like we do every year. You actually signed our family's tax papers, which showed the sale and transfer of money. Good luck finding the money in 2 years. Martha was in shock, sitting there with her mouth open like a fish. I got up, left the room, and went upstairs to the guest room. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and started crying. My alarm went off at 3 o'clock the next morning. I rolled out of bed, took a quick shower, and hopped on a flight to Florida to start my new life as a single person. I purchased a condo on Clearwater Beach, just across the bay from Tampa. I totally surprised Martha that one night. I thought Martha and her lawyers would take a while to go through all the legal papers and money stuff before realizing that almost $34 million from the sale of her property wasn't under the control of a U.S. bank, so it wouldn't be part of the divorce settlement. It was a pretty shocking revelation, to be honest. If my family's history is anything to go by, the next step in my plan should be sorted in 5 weeks, on the Friday after Thanksgiving. My dad was tight with his grandma, Edith, back in the day. She used to organize a little outing just for the two of them every week. As time went on, my mom took over the planning. She used to drive up to Portland, Maine once a month to visit Edith at her assisted living place. We'd grab lunch together, and if Edith was up for it, we'd carry on with our little family tradition. Edith started it and Martha kept it going for the past 15 years. Every Christmas, on the Friday after Thanksgiving, Martha would go to the bank and take out the 24 figurines that make up our family's nativity scene from a big safety deposit box. Each figurine was stored in a velvet box. The kids and I would go out and gather 10 or 12-foot Christmas trees. It would take us all day to decorate our house. The nativity scene, placed on a table covered in straw and surrounded by 2 trees, was the centerpiece of our holiday decorations. The main attraction of our setup was 3 rows of poinsettia flowers placed in front of the table to protect the expensive figurines from our guests' wandering hands. Once all the decorations were set up, Martha would always stand in front of her beloved nativity set and tears would start flowing down her cheeks. In fact, Martha cried every day during the holiday season when she looked at that scene. She confessed that it wasn't her favorite place to be, but it reminded her of all the blessings in her life. The scene filled her with emotion. We kept the decorations up from the past and present until the day before we went back to work after the holidays. On that day, we took everything down and had the family help pack it away. Martha would carefully box up each little decoration and put it on the kitchen counter. The next day, she would drop them off at the bank before work to store in the safety deposit box until next year. Most of my divorce plan was finished in less than 3 years, except for one part. So in the past 3 years, I've been able to kick off the new year with a business trip. My flight usually doesn't take off until around noon, so instead of going into the office, I spend my morning working from my home office. For the first 2 years, Martha and I would have breakfast together on the first day of work. I'd help her carry her stuff to the car, she'd give me a kiss on the cheek, and then head off to the bank before work. Finally, last year, things changed to what I had been hoping for. Martha, all dressed up, asked Chris, "Hey, can you do me a solid?" I looked up from our bedroom and said, "Sure, what's up?" She said, "I know I'm gonna be super busy when I get in this morning, so do you think you could take the figures to the bank before your flight?" I thought for a second before replying, "Yeah, no problem. I'll take care of it." Just as I expected, Martha's text came in around noon on Friday, right after Thanksgiving. But there was a problem. One of the figurines had a hole in it. I couldn't help but exclaim, "Ah, man." So, Kate, my 38-year-old neighbor who's been through a divorce, saw me laughing so hard that coffee came out of my nose while we were hanging out by my bedroom window. She chuckled along with me and then asked if I needed to reply to a text or if I could quickly dodge it before I had to go. After a quick shower, Kate gave me a kiss and left for home. Once she was gone, I checked my phone and saw a bunch of messages and missed calls from Martha, her family, and our kids. Even though I didn't really feel like talking to my dad, I figured it would be way easier to just call Kate back than to deal with everyone else. Martha was pissed when she said to Chris, "Why did it take you so damn long to call me back?" I was avoiding one of my annoying neighbors. Martha took a breath before continuing, "I want my nativity scene and I want it now. Just go to the bank and get it, Chris. I know you didn't put it back in the safety deposit box last year. The last time I checked was last Christmas when I took out the figurines." Before she could finish, I asked why you didn't put them back last year when you promised to. "Hey Chris, can you please give me back my stuff?" "Martha, I'm sorry but you got it wrong. I remember you putting those boxes in your car before heading to work, like you do every year. What are you trying to do, Martha? Sheesh, why are you treating me like this? I know you're mad, but why you gotta be so nasty? It's crazy how you won't take any blame for your own problems." Yo Martha, I'm hanging up now. I think I'll check in with everyone else instead. I called them and left the same message. Martha is trying to stir up trouble as our court date gets closer. I'm not sure if anyone believed me, but I was confident that no one had proof that I owned the figurines. Our divorce was finalized 14 months after I filed. Martha fought at every step, throwing up barriers and roadblocks. She even got the police and insurance investigators involved in the disappearance of her nativity scene. My main point was that as far as I remember, I put all 24 boxes of figurines in Martha's car trunk. I would be shocked if. Nobody believed me, but they couldn't prove I stole Martha's family heirloom. Martha and I only saw each other a few times a year at our kids' events. We were polite, but kept our distance. 14 years after we split, I found out Martha was fighting breast cancer. Her time was running out. My daughter called and asked if I could visit her in hospice. When I showed up the next day, Martha looked exhausted. I watched over her for a while. I spent an hour holding back tears a few times as I reminisced. I must have been lost in thought because she caught me off guard. "You were spot on, you know." I returned the smile when I glanced up at my one and only wife. "Obviously, I was always right, but I'm just curious, what are you talking about?" Her smile faltered as she spoke. "You warned me that my feelings for you would turn into hatred by the end of the divorce. After all the awful things they did to you and our family, I hated you for a long time. I'm ashamed to admit it, Martha." Hey, when I said hi to her, She smiled back and we both laughed. Chris, do you still hate me? I thought about it for a minute and said nah, he's too much work. I got tired eventually, so what about you? We both started nodding in agreement by the time I finished talking. Yeah, I agree, he's not worth it after a while. We talked for over 2 hours. I was wrapping up this really old story about our kid's childhood when I saw that Martha had fallen asleep. At first, I thought about leaving, but then I decided to stay. Maybe the last time I'd see her alive. Martha and I kept chatting after she woke up from her quick nap. We were cracking up like idiots when our son Brian, his wife Sue, and their 3 grandkids walked in. I could tell Brian was happy that I was visiting his mom. I didn't stay too long because I wanted Brian and his family to have Martha's complete focus. As I was leaving, I said my goodbyes and gave Martha a soft kiss. Hey Chris, can I ask you a favor? Hey Brian and Sue, can you guys give us some space? Martha and I need to chat. I want Brian's and Rose's families to take turns hosting Christmas festivities. Can you help make that happen? Instead of shopping on Black Friday 2018 like everyone else, my family hung out at my daughter's house with Rose's family, Brian, and his crew. Yo, we were decking out the house with candles and wreaths in every window, flipping on the lights on the bushes out front, and scattering Christmas knickknacks all over the first floor. We all decided the best decorations were in Rose's family room. We set up 2 massive 12-foot trees with a star-covered table in between. In front of the table, we lined up 3 rows of poinsettias and spread out Martha's nativity scene with 24 pieces on top. I headed out for the night and Brian and Rose came along with me. As I glanced at the figurines one last time, tears streamed down my face as I remembered my first visit here many years ago. She was standing in front of the display, crying and calling it her happy place. This story really drives home the fact that solving conflicts takes time, self-reflection, and a willingness to make compromises. Another story, after being friends for almost a year, I realized that my wife was the one I wanted to get to know better and potentially spend the rest of my life with. So, I asked her to be my girlfriend and she said yes. We started dating and our love for each other went through the roof. We were like the perfect couple, matching outfits, doing everything together, and constantly surprising each other with gifts. I made sure to always keep her happy, since I was making good money and could afford to spoil her. She was a total fashionista, and I knew exactly what kind of clothes, shoes, and bags she liked. Whenever I could, I'd take her shopping and let her pick out whatever she wanted, because her happiness was my happiness. We were together for a year before she moved in with me, and then we got married after dating for 2 years. Besides wanting to be together, one reason I asked my wife to move in while we were still dating was because I traveled a lot. My place was bigger and nicer than hers, so it made more sense for me to keep it while I was away instead of paying rent. After we got married, we didn't see any need to move out since we weren't planning on having kids anytime soon. Plus, I already loved the neighborhood and our little spot. Hey guys, the friends I met in the neighborhood really made me feel like I belonged. I didn't want to lose that when I started dating. Luckily, my wife also made friends with some neighbors and their bond only got stronger after we tied the knot. The first few years of our marriage were amazing. We were so in love and treated each other with so much care and respect. On weekends, we'd have little gatherings with the neighbors at our place or someone else's, and we all got along great. Even when I had to travel for work. On all them work trips, I never even thought about straying from my wife. I always kept her photo in my wallet and in my car for a few reasons. I figured she wouldn't cheat on me cause I took care of her in bed, gave her everything she wanted, and treated her right, like a good husband should. Everything was going great in our lives until one day, everything changed. I had been away on a business trip for 4 days, and when I got back, I noticed my wife was acting strange. Man, she was acting a bit weird. She didn't give me the cold shoulder or anything, but she was definitely on edge and seemed like she thought something was up. At first, I thought maybe she had messed up a family visit that my dad had set up for me, but when I checked, the visa was still good to go. To double-check, I looked at the security camera footage from her house, and somehow, the last 4 days of footage when I was away on a business trip was missing. It was obvious that she had deleted it, and that made me even more suspicious. I didn't confront her about it because I didn't want to start any drama, but I definitely had my doubts. Someone tried to persuade me, but I just kept quiet and focused on recovering the deleted files. When I finally recovered them, I was shocked to find explicit videos of my wife with our new neighbor who had been coming over to our house recently. We had been welcoming him warmly, and the craziest part is that I had no idea anything was going on between them. I just thought my wife was being friendly like she is with our other neighbors. If she hadn't slipped up, I might never have found out about their affair. So, I found out my wife was cheating on me while I was out of town. They got it on in our bed and even on the damn couch in the living room. I was so damn pissed off that instead of feeling all sad and heartbroken like most people, I was just straight up furious. I wanted to kick her ass, but I didn't want to do anything stupid before my trip. So, I came up with this genius plan to throw a barbecue for our new neighbor, who happened to be the one my wife was cheating on me with. And get this, my wife had no clue that I knew about her little affair. I just played it cool and acted like everything was all good. A few days later, we had a welcome party. After stuffing our faces and downing a bunch of drinks, we were supposed to watch a cool movie like Neighbors. But when everyone gathered, I surprised them with a different kind of movie. I showed them videos of my wife and our new neighbor that I had dug up. Everyone was shocked, especially my wife. Her eyes nearly popped out of her head when everyone turned to look at her. They won't stop talking about that movie for a long time. As soon as the new neighbor's girlfriend started yelling at her boyfriend, you could tell she was not happy. She ended things right then and there. Meanwhile, my wife was sobbing and trying to get our neighbors to convince me to take her back. But they were all so mad at her that they just ignored her. Once I got them to see what I wanted them to see, I told them the party was over and they all left. After everyone was gone, my wife was bawling and telling me it's not what I think, so I let her explain. But when she said that, I got so damn angry that I yelled at her and told her to never come back to my house. I also said I was already filing for divorce and she would hear from my lawyer soon. I threw some of her things out and slammed the door. Honestly, humiliating her in public made me feel a little better, but it didn't come close to the heartbreak I was feeling. I loved her so much and imagined spending the rest of my life with her. I never saw her again after that day. The new neighbor bounced. I reckon he took her too, 'cause they knew they messed up with our neighbors. We ended up splitting up, and I honestly hope she's miserable. This all went down 5 years ago, and even though I've moved on, the idea of my current girlfriend cheating on me still makes me sick. I try to push it away, but deep down I know most women ain't worth genuine love. They're selfish and only care about themselves. It's a tough spot to be in. Dealing with cheating and then putting it out there like that is so stressful. It's important to work through it so it doesn't mess up future relationships. Not everyone is a cheater, and not everyone will make the same mistakes. Getting help from a professional can be a good start to healing. My wife and I met in college and we clicked instantly. We were inseparable and always up for an adventure. After we graduated, we got married and started building our dream life together. We were like two peas in a pod. So, we had a kid and busted our butts to give her the best stuff growing up. Fast forward a bit and things are awesome. We've got a nice house, great friends, and killer jobs. It's like a dream life. Plus, our daughter's piano teacher thinks she's got some serious talent. Easy decision to nurture her love for music, so we started looking for a piano coach. A neighbor suggested someone who taught his kid how to play. So, we hired this guy to play guitar for us. He's a young dude who just graduated from music school and needs to make some money to pay off his fees. I actually thought he was pretty cool, seemed like a good guy. My wife doesn't work full-time, so she was home during his lessons. He would usually come over on Mondays and Wednesdays to teach her. Whenever I got home, he was usually just finishing up and getting ready to leave. After a few weeks of him working with us, I started noticing some changes in my wife. She was more distant, her smile seemed fake, and something just felt off. At first, I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I thought it was just work stress messing with my head, but when I saw her getting a text from the piano instructor, I knew something was going on. She snatched up her phone, turned it away from me to read it, then bolted out of the room. That definitely didn't seem good. Instead of jumping to conclusions and accusing her of stuff, I decided to play detective. I wanted to see how she was with him, so I started coming home earlier in the day. You know, I started picking up on some shady vibes during those long chats that seemed a little too cozy, and they were giving each other tons of glances. Their body language was way too intimate for just friends. My dad even tipped me off that there might be something fishy going on, so I had to gather some evidence to catch them in the act. I bought some mini security cameras and hid them in key spots while my wife was out grocery shopping, one in the living room by the piano, one in the kitchen, and one in our bedroom. And let me tell ya, those cameras came in handy real quick. By the end of it all. So the first week those cameras were set up, I decided to take a peek. And let me tell you, it was crystal clear what was going on. My wife watched as the instructor came in and started teaching my daughter for an hour. Then she sent her off to play in her room, saying the lesson was done. And what happened next? They headed to the kitchen, where they kissed, hugged, and did God knows what else, thinking they were all alone. That was the final straw for me. We were on the brink of divorce, which was the last thing I wanted. But I couldn't just turn a blind eye to that kind of behavior. She really pissed me off with her actions, and I was so confused and angry. Maybe I shouldn't have gone through with my revenge plan, but I felt like I had to do something. We had dinner plans with some friends and neighbors, and it was supposed to be a big deal. The kids were all gonna be at the neighbor's house with a babysitter, so the adults could relax and have a few drinks. I thought it was the perfect time to confront my wife about what I found out. Before dinner, I made sure to invite our piano teacher, even though he tried to say no. I insisted that he come. I finally said yes to the invite because I thought I could network and meet some potential clients during the meal. The vibe was good, so I stood up and made a toast. I turned to my wife and told her how glad I was to finally see her true colors. I straight up said that being married to her for another 20 years would have been hell. She looked offended and confused. Then I dropped the bomb that I didn't want to be married to a cheater. The room went silent and she just stared at me like she didn't get it. So, I spilled the beans to everyone about my wife cheating with her piano teacher. I whipped out my phone, played the video, and blew everyone's minds. They all stared at me like I was some kind of alien. People bolted out of there, leaving me and the missus alone in her place. She asked how I found out, and I spilled all the beans. She claimed it was a mistake and she had no clue it would get so out of hand. Then she begged for another shot. I just made it clear that I was serious and told her to start thinking about divorce. So, my neighbor who hooked me up with that teacher hit me up a few days later to say sorry. He feels kinda bad about what went down. He fired the guy and spread the word to the others he recommended him to. He's expecting to lose those connections too. To make things right for the kid, I'm letting my wife keep the house even though she still owes a ton of cash on her own. We worked out a custody deal too. We're gonna try to be nice for our daughter's sake, so here's the next story. The sky got all dark and rainy, then out of nowhere, it started pouring down with thunder and lightning. But soon enough, the rain stopped and the wind came through, clearing up the clouds for the sun to come out. Alexei Nikovic woke up and saw his wife still asleep, looking all cute. He just stared at her lovingly. Man, that lady is so amazing, I really love her. Her first wife Alexei died 5 years ago from asthma. They couldn't save her. She couldn't have kids even though her husband was healthy and really wanted them, which made her feel bad and messed up her health. She had an abortion when she was in college before she met Alexei, but kept it a secret. Now she's infertile because of it. She didn't tell her husband for a long time, but then she got sick and her asthma got worse, so she finally confessed. Before she passed away, she no longer felt the need to keep it a secret from her husband that she couldn't have kids. She also revealed her strong belief in eternal life. She tried to justify herself by saying she loved him deeply and asked for forgiveness, knowing he and God wouldn't forgive her mistake. Now Alexei Nikich is going to be a widower. I couldn't help but wonder if I really loved my wife. Why did she keep this lie for so long? I would have understood. But she made a mistake when she was young. Everything can be forgiven except for the lies. She's gone now, and all that's left in her soul is emptiness. This guy was just coasting through life, not settling down or finding any real happiness with the ladies. He hit 44 a couple years back and was feeling pretty empty inside. But then, on a train ride home from a work trip, he met this woman who was 8 years younger and totally caught his eye. She was gorgeous, funny, and just clicked with him. They lived in different cities, but made it work by visiting each other for 4 months. And before he knew it, Alexei was head over heels in love with her. My name's Tatiana, and he popped the question real quick, saying he wanted me to be his wife. He knew he had feelings for me, but then I hit him with an unexpected rejection. I told him, I'm sorry but I can't lie to you. I was married before, but it didn't work out. I had a bad accident when I was a kid, fell through the ice while skating, got sick, and now I can't have kids. But that's not the real reason my ex and I split, he just loved booze more than he loved me. The guy was shocked by Tatiana's confession, but 2 weeks later he asked her to marry him again. I guess I'm in for a wild ride. I ain't meant to have kids and it's too late. I've fallen for you. Thanks for being honest. How do you feel about me? Tell me straight up. Tatiana put her arm around Alex's shoulders. I love you too. Honestly, I've never felt true love before. It's all on you. They've been married for almost 2 years. Alexei thought Tatiana was his destiny. The clock hit 7 a.m. Tatiana woke up, smiled, and kissed her husband. Are you awake? She asked. No, he replied, I'm just admiring you. I feel so lucky to have you. In the evening, Alexei Nikovic left for a business trip as the chief engineer at an aircraft manufacturing company, known for his expertise and reputation. Tatiana spent the whole day working as a psychologist at the same company. She fed her husband and cooked multiple dishes. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Tatiana opened the door to find her friend Alexei, who is in charge of the technical department at the aircraft factory. Wow, what's going on? Peter, the cheerful and smart one, replied, Don't worry about it. There are a few questions on the way to the airport, we'll talk about it. I let your car go, let's take my Jeep and chat at the same time. I hope you don't mind, right? Except we're kind of annoyed. Okay, calm down, I'll be right out. Alexei kissed his wife goodbye and promised to see her soon. Okay, honey, I'll be waiting. I love you, call me when you land. Goodbye, sweetheart. Okay, I will. The door closed as Alexei stepped outside. Jump in the Jeep, let's go. So, what's up? Peter started going over the blueprints again. Hey Alex, just a reminder, you're my favorite, what's wrong with you? You know I'm experienced at this job, stop treating me like a newbie. It's nothing, I just wanted to say goodbye. What are you up to, girl? There's already a commotion at the airport. Peter really acts like a girl is freaking out, it's more than half. Alright, so Alexei was joking around an hour before check-in. He said, with a grin, please don't bother me, Alex. You got a hand in your ticket, fake being sick, and I'll take your place. You know I hate my job just as much as you do, maybe even a bit less. After that, call your wife and let her know you're catching a flight. You'll be at the airport for another 3 hours, maybe less. Grab a drink at a restaurant, chill out, and then sneak home in a cab without telling anyone. Just remember, I got your back. Hey man, I'd do anything for you, but I can't keep this to myself any longer. I know where and how I found out about this, but I'm not telling you tonight. Your wife is seeing a pilot and he's going to her place. I've told you before that she's pretty loose in general, not necessarily with guys, but you didn't listen. Instead, you're ready to attack me. A bunch of people at the factory have been gossiping about your wife cheating on you. Some have even seen her with someone else. Hey man, some people are saying you've been messing around with a pilot or even more than one. I don't want your name being dragged through the mud by these gossipers. You're a well-known guy in this town and this gossip needs to stop. It's been going on for over 6 months now. But when I heard the recording of the pilot talking to your wife on the phone, I stopped doubting. You know the saying, trust but verify. If I'm lying, go ahead and do whatever you want to me. You can spit on my face, punch me, I can take it all. But I want you to handle this situation. I don't want to be involved in it. If you're feeling hurt or upset, you have the key to the apartment. We'll come in quietly after 1 a.m. You'll figure out the rest on your own. Just be patient. Peter didn't say anything, Alex was quiet too. Then he said, Are you out of your mind? What kind of game is this? Well, I can't believe it. I can tell how much she cares about me. She's always talking about love, even in bed. She's grateful that we met on her trip. I can't believe she's such a good liar. Some people are just evil. The announcer said, check. Yo, Alexei got up, checked his ticket, and went back to Peter saying, "Yo, I'm ready for this flight. We're gonna have a showdown, you feel me?" Peter, lounging in his armchair, noticed that Alexei was already shocked by the news and needed to go home to figure things out. "So, Peter, I think you got a ticket for this flight, right?" Peter nodded. "Don't bail on the tickets, man. You have no idea how messed up you've put me in." In his heart, Peter understood everything. He could easily imagine himself in Alexei's shoes. It's a tough spot. It's tough for a good guy to wrap his head around and agree to do some sneaky spying on Alex. "Excuse me, but only time will tell if you were ready to take off today." He gave his friend a pat on the shoulder and wished him a smooth landing before heading out, squeezing his head with his hands. Alex was worried about finding out his wife was cheating. His thoughts were all over the place. He felt a heavy weight in his chest after taking some meds. He realized the truth had been thrown at him and it was hard to catch. And he let go of the plan that was weighing on his mind. The boarding announcement was made. "Alex is finally done." He lowered his head, clasped his hands, and just sat there, wondering what to do. "I can't focus with all these messed up thoughts in my head." He called his wife, calmly telling her that he's flying out. Hearing her happy voice wishing him a safe trip, Alex waited in the airport for over 2 hours, not giving up on his ticket. It was raining outside, coating the streets with a wet layer of water. I was walking home, feeling the glow from the lanterns reflecting in the air and the rain making me feel refreshed. My head was pounding with bad thoughts, asking me what to do. Should I just go home? But deep down, my soul knew that wasn't the answer. I was scared, but I had to face the truth. Ignoring my instincts, I stupidly drove home and climbed up to the 5th floor of my old Stalin-era apartment building, with its high ceilings, columns, and fancy decorations. I stopped for a moment on the landing. My heart was racing, his veins in his temples were bulging for over 30 minutes. He stood at the entrance, but there was no point in waiting any longer. He quietly walked into the hallway and checked out the other guy's shoes. He clenched his fist, telling himself to calm down. I'm cool," he repeated in his head. All he needed was self-control. His face looked scared, with a blank expression. Alexei knew that above all, calmness hides disdain. There was no need for any drama, that would be the worst outcome, like getting knocked out. He was freaked out by the thoughts, anger boiling up, jealousy creeping in, but it wasn't my own feelings. I knew how to handle it. He slipped on his fancy slippers and walked into the living room. The round table set for dinner looked unappealing with an unfinished bottle of cognac and a half-empty bottle of champagne. There were nice plates with leftovers next to the bottles, and on one of the chairs, there was a military pilot's jacket hanging. My wife's gorgeous Chinese robe was thrown carelessly on another chair. There were red roses in a vase and a lovely box of chocolates. He fixed up the coffee table and then left. Alex wished she could have stayed longer. The men walked into the kitchen, which was connected to the dining room by a fancy archway. He sat down to gather his thoughts, then moved to the living room. He picked up the dirty dishes, took them to the kitchen, washed and dried them before placing them on a towel. He went back, took off the pilot's clothes, delicately cleaned and ironed them, then hung them on a chair in the living room. In the hallway, he washed his own clothes. Alex took off his shoes and put them next to his clothes. His wife's robe was all nicely ironed and hanging next to his stuff. He walked quietly on the soft carpet towards the bedroom door, opened it a crack, and saw the couple in love, embracing each other. They were barely covered with some Chinese silk, looking happy and pleased. Alex was shocked by his wife's boldness. It was like she was possessed by the devil, making him unable to see clearly. After hearing the creepy sound that turned him into a stone monster, Alexei slammed the door and went into the kitchen. She plopped down on a chair, feeling like his thoughts were slipping away into nothingness. It was like he was stuck in that chair, unable to move. His usual lively demeanor seemed to have vanished. Alexei could feel life slowly draining out of him. The clock on the wall showed it was 3 o'clock in the morning, time for a good night's rest and some sweet dreams. Outside, the morning was starting to break, the darkness fading away. He opened the fridge and grabbed something. Got all the stuff for breakfast ready in an hour. The cooked brekkie was already waiting for the guests in the dining room, smelling amazing with freshly brewed coffee. Alexei brought the tray of coffee to the bedroom, quietly entered, and told everyone to hurry up, 'cause their clothes were done and waiting in the living room. I'm in the dining room waiting for you to wake up and eat. The wife and her lover looked over at the men standing in front of them, looking confused. He probably woke them up from a deep sleep, so they couldn't process what was happening right away. Where did the husband come from, barging into the bedroom like that? Have a cup of coffee, it'll help perk you up, he offered. He walked out quietly, leaving the bedroom. The shock of the husband's unexpected appearance lingered in the air as the couple in love tried to process it. Half an hour later, both the wife and her lover appeared in the dining room, looking equally stunned. Hey, wake up and come to the table, it's time for breakfast. You must be hungry, babe. Have a cup of coffee, do you like it in the morning? I made it just the way you like it. Come on, everything's ready and hot, dig in. Here's your coffee, I made 4, one was just warmed up in the microwave. Enjoy your meal. Alexis, with his stoic face like a stone mask, looked calmly at his wife and the stranger, the pilot, who didn't make a big deal out of it, he just stayed cool. Feeling pretty quiet knowing that no words could really explain why he's here, he just sat down at the table and decided to have some breakfast. His wife, with no hint of a blush on her pale face, seemed speechless as she stared at her husband. Her mind was racing, wondering why he was so silent. Is he going to yell at me or hit me? But he's just sitting there, not saying a word. It's frustrating. I've never been scared of him before, so why am I feeling this overwhelming terror now? My heart feels like it's frozen, and every cell in my body is tense. My body is shaking with fear, I don't know what's gonna happen next. I'm scared, what's wrong, babe? Don't you want some coffee? I made it for you, drink up. He was talking all tough and pushy, his hand shaking. She took the cup and started sipping the coffee, tapping the edge of the cup with her teeth like a little hammer. Alexei stayed cool as a cucumber, his mind all locked up, his words filled with pity for his wife. After finishing breakfast, the pilot stood up from the table, lost in thought. Alexei asked if I could leave, and he said I was free to go. With a little chuckle, Alexei said the pilot tried to open the door but it was locked. He came back without going into the dining room and realized the only way out was through the balcony. The 5th floor was high and he saw an iron fence with sharp spears on top below. The house was quiet and there was no other way out. Sadly, the pilot decided to go through with it. So, I was on the 4th floor and made it to the 3rd floor when suddenly the host was shook up. He was really surprised and started thinking sad thoughts. I wish he had just yelled instead. The pilot thought I had been hit and insulted with his last words, but his creepy silence was even worse than torture. My nerves were shot. He swung his leg over the balcony and fell off. His leg wasn't supported and his other leg didn't have time to find a good spot. His second hand didn't have enough time to. The men fell off the balcony and hit the railing, getting a serious injury that knocked him out and ultimately killed him. His wife saw the pilot's body frantically hanging on the fence from the window, covering her mouth in shock. She couldn't find her phone and the house was soundproof, so she was unsure of what to do. Man, she was going nuts, pacing around the room like a wild animal, clutching her head and freaking out. I mean, what the heck am I supposed to do? How do I sneak a lover into my own place without my husband flipping out? And then I see this note about death and it's like I can hear him saying I've been a total jerk. She tried talking to her husband but he just ignored her. Alexei sat at the kitchen table, totally defeated and disconnected, tired of all the drama and feeling like it's never gonna end. In a panic, she ran to the bathroom and opened the bottom drawer of the dressing table. She found a bottle of vinegar essence and without thinking, chugged half of it in one go. She collapsed on the floor, feeling a sharp pain in her throat. She gasped and wheezed, shouting for help, but all she heard was silence. A woman with a messed up face was writhing in pain, scratching at her own face. She was hoping for help with her tired eyes, looking scared and in pain. After a few minutes of screaming, only a creepy silence filled the room with a weird sound. The bathroom was empty, waiting for her last breath. She went quiet, having a painful spasm before finally stopping breathing. Death was a relief for her. Later, Alexei came into the bathroom and just stood there, staring at his wife's once beautiful face that now looked like a terrifying mask. I saw his legs moving all weird after he came out of the bathroom. Trying to call an ambulance was a struggle with my hands feeling numb. Then I dialed the police number and when I gave the address, the last name I mumbled came out. Turns out there was a dead woman in the apartment and a man had died nearby. I hung up the phone, unlocked the hallway door, and sat down in a chair. It felt like my brain was about to explode, like a little voice was promising to break into tiny pieces. I slumped against the wall, waiting for the ambulance and crime scene. So, for the first time in 20 years on the job, a judge found Alexei guilty and sent him to serve time. It was a tough situation for the judge, who happened to be a woman. She had to deal with a lot of messed up thoughts in her head, considering all the family court cases she'd seen involving cheating spouses. But this case didn't have a clear answer. The murder charge didn't make sense since he didn't actually kill anyone, they kinda did it to themselves. Maybe someone could argue he egged them on, but now that the investigator's report on the interrogation of Alexei Nikovic is out, and it seems like he didn't even try to hide the fact that he went crazy when he caught his wife cheating on him. He was clear that he wasn't gonna get violent and never even yelled. He just wanted to make it clear to his wife that cheating is a huge betrayal to the family. He did some weird stuff like cleaning, making breakfast, coffee, and locking doors to make sure they stayed together, especially his wife. Got it, he knew how serious their actions were, but he never thought it would end so tragically for them. Yeah, he got mad and slammed the door, cut off the house phone, and confiscated their cell phones so they could feel the same sadness and pain he did. Eventually, he planned to forgive the pilot and kick his wife out of the house. But because the damage was already done with his wife and her lover, his efforts were useless. Even if he sent his wife to the hospital, she still regrets it. He didn't do it and just let her deal with the consequences of her own actions. The top lawyer in town took on the case to defend her by showing the court the shady past of Alexei Nikolic's wife. She used to be a prostitute, married to her ex-husband who drank himself to death after finding out she was cheating on him. Tatiana kicked him out of their place and he ended up living on the streets, getting killed in a random incident. So, apparently, the story goes that his wife is a total badass. She apparently fell through the ice when she was a kid, but her family won't confirm it. Turns out, being a love priestess made her unable to have kids. When Alex found out all this from her lawyer, he was shocked because he had feelings for her. He was so messed up that he didn't want to hear any of it. She probably wanted to turn her life around, but her past was holding her back. It was like a curse. The Enterprise petition for the suspect was public. So, this guy worked with 7 different companies, and everyone agreed that he was a solid, respected, honest, and exceptional leader. When his wife got caught cheating just 2 years into their marriage, all the witnesses came forward to back him up. It was pretty obvious that his wife was up to no good. The pilot's wife did speak up during the trial, but she was torn up about leaving her kids behind. She didn't defend her husband though, because she had a feeling he was cheating and sneaking out with other women. She didn't see it as news anymore. She thought it was just an accident, maybe God decided to punish the wrong person before making a final judgment. The judge let the defendant speak last. Alexei Nikovic looked like he had aged during the investigation, with his gray hair and beard showing the suffering he went through, which he wouldn't wish on his worst enemy. He was devastated by the tragedy, as bringing the forest disease was never part of his intentions. He expressed his sympathies to the pilot's wife for the loss of her husband. He told his lawyers that he'd throw a bunch of cash at his wife to help with the kids, and he'd keep on supporting them. When the court took a break for sentencing, they came back with a not guilty verdict. No evidence, so Alex is getting released from custody. The crowd in the courtroom went wild, giving the judge a standing ovation to show their appreciation for the decision. It's not unusual for a guy to trust his lady completely in real life. Love can really blind a guy sometimes, all he can hear is his beloved. He's just head over heels for her, a real man in love. Love always has a pure heart, and nobody is safe from making a mistake. The same goes for the ladies. Alexei Nikovic quickly sold his house and quit his job. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't convince him to stay and keep working. Alexei just said, "Sorry, friends, but I gotta go. Thanks for being nice to me, but I'm out." Everyone knew the real reason and they were all sorry to see him go. So, this really skilled guy and expert, Peter, was feeling lost when his buddy Alex decided to peace out. Alex spilled the beans to Peter, saying, "Hey man, remember our pal Sergey from flight school? Well, he dipped to eastern Siberia with his wife 6 years back. Sadly, his wife and kid passed away in a tragic accident. I went to his funeral solo since we were out of town. I helped him out financially and had his back. It was a huge blow for him. He really loved his fam. He was really upset and devastated, so he stopped flying, quit his job, and went to work as a ranger at the Tiger Reserve. I found out where he was and sent him a letter. Surprisingly, he wrote back saying he's waiting for me and that he wants to help me like I helped him before. We share a deep connection and he could see how much I was hurting. He couldn't bear to be without me, we've been together for so long. Everything will be okay, come visit us and we can go hunting together. I can't wait. Yo, I stayed here with the money I needed from selling the apartment. I gave it all to the bookie at the arena. The pilot's wife, she's a nice lady, she cried when she saw Nico. She gets it all. Fate wasn't on my side, so I won't push my luck anymore. I'm gonna treat myself to some hunting gear. Sergey got me a sick gun as a gift. Maybe I'll start working as a huntsman like Sergey. I'm telling you now, but I can't hear myself too well. Time will tell how things go from here. You know, Serge wrote in his. Yo, so check it, the Tiger, man, it's like the ultimate healer for a messed up soul. The way it operates, it's strict but it's also fair. Only then can I really find peace and forgiveness. It's like, misfortune gave me a shot at starting fresh, and my friends, they had each other's backs. But then the next day, Alexei just up and left, flying off into the distance. But like, Siberia, man, it feels so close and dear to me already. This whole story about love, betrayal, and trying to figure out the real meaning of life, it's like this crazy journey through the human soul. The twists and turns, they make you think about a bunch of stuff, you know. Let me tell you our story from the beginning. Me and her, we've been together for more than 10 years, but only been married for 7. We met back in high school and have been inseparable since. She's the only woman I've ever been with, and I thought I was the only man she'd been with. We've built a good life together, raised 3 kids, own our own house, and even have a vacation home in Florida that we hit up every summer. It felt like we were living the American dream. But as we've gotten older. So, like, me and my partner have been so caught up with work and the kids that our sex life has kinda taken a hit. It's not like we never did it, but it just wasn't as exciting as we both wanted. She was always so tired from looking after the kids and working long hours, and I was exhausted too. I started to notice she was acting different, which was weird because she never really cared much about how she looked. I always thought she was naturally gorgeous and I loved everything about her. She didn't need to wear makeup for me to think she was beautiful. Dress nice, I thought she looked amazing with a fresh face and sweatpants. But then she started hitting the gym, and even though she was already petite, she got some curves after having 3 kids. I guess she wanted to shed some of that baby weight. And let me be clear, I never pushed her to do it. She was my wife and I adored her, even with the changes her body went through from carrying our kids. But on top of that, she started dressing up more, wearing fancy dresses and buying new clothes. It reminded me of how she used to dress when we first got together. Once we started going out, I asked her why she was wearing makeup all of a sudden. She just said it made her feel more confident. I believed her because she had never given me a reason to doubt her. I thought maybe she just needed a little self-esteem boost. But then, a few weeks later, I noticed she was being super secretive with her phone. I had read too many Reddit stories about people cheating to ignore the sketchy behavior. I thought we had good communication, but now I'm not so sure. I asked her about it and she said I was freaking out for no reason, and that she wasn't doing anything shady on her phone. I didn't want to be all suspicious and asked to see it because I didn't want to start a fight about trust. She unlocked it and offered it to me, but I felt like that was enough, so I just shook my head and said sorry. One night she said she was going to a book club at a nearby bookstore and took off. I figured she'd be back in a couple hours, but she didn't show up until 4 hours later. When I asked her where she'd been, she just shrugged. She was lying to me again. She said she went for drinks with some girls, but I checked the bookstore's website and there was no book club meeting scheduled. I had enough of her lies, so I decided to find out the truth myself. My gut feeling told me something was off, so I searched online and hired a private investigator. About a week later, she finally came clean. Bro, this lady came at me with the same BS about the book club. I immediately contacted the investigator and spilled the beans about the chance to catch her in the act. We didn't waste any time and decided to see what she was up to. I stayed home, freaking out and waiting for any updates from the investigator. About 4 hours later, my wife came home. Shortly after, I got a call from the investigator, so I made an excuse and took the call outside. He told me that he followed my wife to some dude's house, where he greeted her with a kiss on the lips. Man, I was shocked. Yo, they both stayed holed up indoors for hours. Dude managed to track down the owner of the house and got a name. And guess what? When he searched online, he found pics the guy had posted on some kinky forum. The more he dug, the more he saw his followers and people reacting to his posts. And then he stumbled upon a profile that belonged to my wife. I was totally shocked and devastated. And to top it off, I was freaking out about how she could just meet some random dude from the internet and potentially wreck our marriage by being with him. I had to figure out what the heck was going on between them. Alright, so I waited for my wife to pass out and then I snuck onto her laptop to try and snoop on her account. Lucky for me, she was already logged in so I didn't have to do much hacking. I found out that she had been chatting with a bunch of random guys, not just the one she went to bed with. There were some pretty explicit messages and even some pics she had been sending out. After seeing all of that, there was no way we could ever work things out. Man, she really screwed up our marriage for a stupid fling. It was messed up because we had a family reunion coming up soon, so I figured that would be the perfect time to break the news to her. If she wanted to ruin our marriage, I was gonna make sure she regretted it. I spent weeks avoiding her, staying late at work just to stay away from her. It was tough seeing her knowing the shady stuff she was up to with those guys. I had the divorce papers ready by the time the family event rolled around. When we had our family reunion, all the kids were splashing around in the pool or running around like crazy, while the grown-ups were chilling at the table, sipping on drinks and chowing down on some barbecue. I suddenly stood up, called for everyone's attention, and turned to my wife. I straight up told her that I was done with her, right then and there. There was a gasp from the crowd as I handed her the divorce papers I had brought with me. I then spilled the beans to everyone, explaining that I had caught her red-handed exchanging messages with other guys online, and I had a strong feeling she had cheated on me with one of them. She stormed off from the table and was livid because she felt so embarrassed. She tried to tell me that she never cheated on me and that the messages were just out of curiosity about certain things. She swore she never acted on anything, but when I mentioned her kissing another man at their house, she went silent. We went from filing for divorce, and she didn't ask for anything from me. If she had, she wouldn't have gotten it because she was the one who cheated. The whole divorce was her fault. Her fault. She ended up crashing at her grandma's place and helping her out. We share custody of the kids, but they usually prefer hanging out with me. My PI did some snooping on the guy and found out he's married with his own bunch of kids. I thought about not getting involved, but I knew I had to do the right thing. I tracked down his wife, showed her the proof of their affair, and she dumped his sorry ass. She got the house, the kids, and is getting some serious spousal support from him. Alright, so I'm trying to get back out there in the dating world. I've only been with one chick and it didn't end well. Thanks for listening to my story today. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you've got a crazy story to share about yourself or someone else, hit me up. Take care.